There comes a point where you realize begging, chasing, over-texting, and playing games, it's all just exhausting. It drains you, makes you question yourself, and worst of all, it keeps you stuck in places you don't belong. You don't need to chase anyone, not a friend, not a partner, not an opportunity, because when something is right for you, it meets you where you are. There's a moment in life when you realize that seeking validation is like chasing a moving target. No matter how much you do, how much you give, or how much you try to fit into the mold others create for you, it's never enough. The goalposts keep shifting, the approval is temporary, and you're left feeling empty, wondering why you still don't feel secure. But here's the truth. Validation is external. Self-worth is internal. And when you base your confidence, decisions, and identity on the approval of others, you give them the power to decide how you feel about yourself. It's a never-ending cycle of seeking, pleasing, and performing, one that leaves you exhausted and disconnected from who you really are. Self-worth is knowing deep in your bones that you are enough as you are. It's not about arrogance or ego. It's about recognizing that you don't have to prove yourself to be worthy of love, respect, or belonging. The moment you grasp this, your entire perspective shifts. Think about a time when you compromised your own needs just to be accepted. Maybe you ignored red flags in a relationship because you didn't want to lose someone. Maybe you overextended yourself at work because you craved recognition. Maybe you said yes when you really meant no because you were afraid of disappointing others. Each time you did that, a small piece of you got chipped away. That's the price of seeking validation. You trade pieces of yourself for temporary approval. Self-worth, on the other hand, doesn't ask you to shrink, chase, or prove. It asks you to stand, to take up space, to walk away from anything that requires you to beg for basic decency. This shift isn't always easy. It requires unlearning years, sometimes decades, of conditioning that taught you to equate approval with worth. Maybe you grew up in a home where love felt conditional, where being good meant being quiet, agreeable, and easy to manage. Maybe you were taught that your value was tied to achievement, to perfection, to making others happy. If that's the case, then of course you learned to seek validation. It was how you survived. But what once helped you cope might now be the very thing holding you back. Self-worth means you stop outsourcing your confidence. It means you stop waiting for someone else to say, "You're good enough." It means you stop bending over backward to be chosen and start choosing yourself instead. This doesn't mean you stop caring about connection. It doesn't mean you become indifferent or detached from people. It simply means you know that your worth isn't up for debate, whether someone praises you or criticizes you, whether they stay or go, whether they see your value or overlook it. You remain steady. You don't have to chase people who don't see you. You don't have to convince anyone to love you. You don't have to exhaust yourself trying to be what others expect. When you move from validation seeking to self-worth, everything changes. You stop over-explaining. You stop proving. You stop trying to fit into places that were never meant for you. Instead, you start living in alignment with who you really are. And that energy, it's powerful, because here's what happens. The moment you stop begging for a seat at the table, you realize you can build your own. Games are exhausting. The overthinking, the second guessing, the waiting for a response, the decoding of mixed signals. It's an endless cycle of emotional turmoil. And yet, so many people get caught up in it, believing that mystery, detachment, or playing hard to get somehow makes them more valuable. But let's be honest. If something is real, if something is meant for you, it doesn't require manipulation. It doesn't need you to pretend to be uninterested. It doesn't force you to read between the lines or analyze every word. Real connection thrives in clarity, not confusion. So why do people play games? Fear. Fear of being too vulnerable, fear of being rejected, fear of showing too much interest and losing power. Somewhere along the way, society started equating detachment with strength and interest with weakness. The less you care, the more desirable you are. That's the narrative. But here's the problem with that. If two people are too busy pretending not to care, how does anything real ever develop? Clarity is about courage. It's about having the confidence to say what you mean and mean what you say. It's about choosing honesty over mind games, directness over manipulation, and authenticity over pretense. Clarity says, this is who I am, this is what I want, and this is what I expect. And yet, so many people settle for ambiguity. They accept half-hearted effort. They allow inconsistency. They tolerate people who keep them guessing, who send mixed signals, who show up one day and disappear the next. But here's the truth. When someone wants to be in your life, you won't have to decode their intentions. Their actions will make it obvious. Think about the energy it takes to play games, the should I text first debate, the how long should I wait before responding strategy, the I won't tell them how I feel until they tell me first hesitation. It's all rooted in insecurity, in the belief that if we reveal too much, we lose control. But control is an illusion. What's meant for you isn't going to slip away because you were honest. And what isn't meant for you won't stay, no matter how perfectly you play the game. Clarity also means recognizing when someone isn't giving you the honesty you deserve. If you have to constantly wonder where you stand with someone, if you're always questioning their intentions, if they give you just enough attention to keep you around, but never enough to make you feel secure, that's not connection. That's control. That's someone keeping you as an option while they figure out what they really want. People who value you won't make you guess. They won't breadcrumb you with just enough effort to keep you hooked. They won't keep you waiting, wondering, or feeling like you have to fight for a basic level of consistency. Clarity is a form of self-respect. It's knowing what you deserve and refusing to accept less. It's setting the standard that if someone wants to be in your life, they need to show up with honesty, consistency, and effort. It's understanding that love, friendship, and respect are not built on uncertainty. They're built on transparency. When you start choosing clarity over games, you attract people who do the same. The ones who don't make you overthink, the ones who don't leave you hanging, the ones who communicate, who show up, who make their intentions clear. And suddenly, all the energy you wasted playing games is freed up for something far more valuable, real connection. Desperation repels, but confidence attracts. You can feel it in a room, sense it in a conversation, and pick up on it in this smallest interaction. When someone operates from desperation, there's a certain energy they give off, an urgency, a grasping, an unspoken plea to be chosen. It's exhausting, and more importantly, it's ineffective. Confidence, on the other hand, carries a completely different energy. It's not about arrogance or superiority. It's about a quiet, unshakable belief in yourself. It's about knowing your worth so deeply that you don't need to prove it to anyone. So what does desperation look like? It looks like constantly seeking reassurance, over-explaining yourself, bending over backward to be liked, and tolerating disrespect just to keep someone around. It looks like over-texting, over-apologizing, over-compensating. It's the energy of please pick me instead of I know my value. Desperation shows up in relationships when you cling to someone who isn't fully choosing you. It shows up in work when you take whatever you can get instead of waiting for what you actually deserve. It shows up in friendships when you tolerate one-sided connections just to avoid being alone. It shows up in the way you speak, the way you carry yourself, and the way you interact with the world. But here's the truth. When you operate from desperation, you send a message that you don't believe you're enough. And people pick up on that energy. They may not consciously recognize it, but they feel it. And instead of drawing them closer, it pushes them away. Confidence, however, shifts everything. Confidence says, I know what I bring to the table, and I'm not afraid to eat alone. It says I don't chase, I don't beg, and I don't settle. It's the energy of someone who is rooted in their own worth, who isn't seeking external validation to feel complete. Confidence is walking away from situations that don't serve you, even when it's hard. It's knowing that rejection isn't a reflection of your value, but rather a sign of misalignment. It's trusting that what's meant for you will recognize you without you having to prove yourself. When you exude confidence, you become magnetic. Not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because people are naturally drawn to those who are secure in themselves. Confidence creates space. It allows things to come to you instead of you forcing them to happen. Think about the difference between someone who is desperate for love versus someone who simply knows they are worthy of it. The desperate person clings, forces, overcompensates. The confident person shows up as they are and trusts that the right person will see them. The same applies to opportunities. Desperate energy in a job interview says, I'll take anything, just please pick me. Confident energy says, I have skills, I have value, and I'm assessing whether this is the right fit for me too. That shift changes everything. But confidence isn't just about how others see you. It's about how you see yourself. It's about knowing that you don't have to hustle for your worth. It's about making choices from a place of abundance rather than lack. It's about showing up fully in your life without fear of rejection or failure. The irony is, the less you try to prove yourself, the more people naturally gravitate toward you. Because true confidence isn't loud, it doesn't demand attention, it simply exists. It's felt in the way you carry yourself, the way you speak, and the way you hold space for yourself in every situation. For too long, people have been taught that being liked is more important than being respected, that saying yes when you really mean no is the key to belonging, that keeping the peace, avoiding conflict, and making everyone else comfortable should be the priority, no matter the cost to yourself. But here's the hard truth. Seeking approval at the expense of your boundaries is self-betrayal. Boundaries are not walls. They are not about shutting people out or being rigid and unapproachable. Boundaries are the foundation of healthy relationships, self-respect, and emotional well-being. They are how you teach people how to treat you. They are how you protect your energy, time, and peace. And yet, so many people abandon their boundaries for the sake of approval. Why? Because we are wired to seek connection. We want to be liked, to be included, to be seen as good and easygoing. Many of us were raised to believe that setting boundaries is selfish, that saying no is rude, and that prioritizing yourself is wrong. So we tolerate, we accommodate, we shrink ourselves down. We let people cross lines they shouldn't, and we tell ourselves that it's fine, even when it's not. But here's what happens when you live for approval instead of boundaries. You become exhausted from overextending yourself. You feel resentment toward people who take too much, when in reality you never told them where the line was. You start losing your sense of self because you are so busy pleasing others that you forget what you actually want. You attract people who benefit from your lack of boundaries, people who will take and take because you haven't made it clear where to stop. Boundaries are not about controlling others. They are about honoring yourself. They are about saying, this is what I will allow, this is what I won't tolerate, this is what I need in order to feel safe and respected. And the reality is, not everyone will like your boundaries. Some people will be frustrated, some will guilt trip you, some will call you difficult or selfish because they benefited from your lack of boundaries. But the people who truly respect you, they will honor them, they will adjust, they will appreciate knowing where you stand. Because boundaries don't push away the right people. They filter out the wrong ones. Think about how often you've said yes when you really wanted to say no. How often you've over-explained yourself just to justify a decision that was yours to make. How often you've tolerated behavior that made you uncomfortable because you didn't want to make things awkward. But the cost of approval is too high when it comes at the expense of your peace. A lack of boundaries doesn't make you more lovable. It makes you more available for people who don't deserve access to you. It makes you a magnet for takers, for users, for those who will gladly accept your overgiving without ever reciprocating. True self-respect is choosing boundaries over approval. It's choosing peace over pleasing. It's choosing to disappoint others rather than abandon yourself. And when you start setting boundaries, something incredible happens. You become lighter. You stop resenting people for taking advantage of you because you no longer allow it. You stop feeling exhausted from saying yes to everything because you've learned the power of saying no. You start attracting people who respect your space, your energy, and your time because they understand that you respect yourself. Boundaries are not barriers. They are doors. They don't close you off. They guide the right people in and keep the wrong ones out. They create the space for relationships that are built on mutual respect rather than silent resentment. They are not just something you set, they are something you live by. There's a gripping fear that comes with letting go, a fear that if you release control, if you stop holding on so tightly, everything will fall apart. That if you don't chase, if you don't fight, if you don't do everything in your power to make things happen, you'll end up with nothing. But here's the truth. Letting go is not giving up. It's making space for what's actually meant for you, making space for the things that align without force, making space for the peace that comes when you stop clinging to things that are already slipping away. The problem is, we have been conditioned to believe that the harder we try, the more we will get, that effort always equals results, that if we just push harder, hold on longer, prove ourselves more, things will work out the way we want. But some things are not meant to be forced. Some things are not meant to be held onto. Some things are meant to be let go so that something better, something more aligned can take their place. Letting go is one of the hardest lessons in life because it requires trust. Trust that if a person walks away, they weren't meant to stay. Trust that if an opportunity slips through your fingers, it wasn't the right one. Trust that if a door closes, another will open, but only if you stop standing in the doorway of the past, refusing to move forward. When you hold on too tightly, whether to a relationship, a job, a friendship, or a version of yourself that no longer fits, you block what's trying to come into your life. Imagine clenching your fists around something. The tighter you grip, the more exhausted you become. The more you try to control, the more you suffer. Letting go is about surrender. Not surrender in the sense of defeat, but surrender in the sense of release. Releasing what's not serving you. Releasing what's weighing you down. Releasing the need to control every outcome. Think about the times in your life when something amazing happened after you finally stopped forcing it. Maybe it was the relationship that improved once you stopped overthinking it. Maybe it was the opportunity that came when you let go of the job that drained you. Maybe it was the peace you found when you stopped chasing people who didn't value you. Letting go creates space for the right things to come in. It allows life to flow instead of being forced. It shifts your energy from grasping to receiving. But letting go is not passive. It's not about sitting back and waiting. It's about actively choosing trust over fear. It's about making the decision to stop holding onto things that hurt you. It's about recognizing that your worth is not tied to whether something stays or goes. When you let go, you step into a different kind of power. A power that says, I trust myself enough to release what's not for me. A power that says, I don't chase, I align. A power that says, I am open to receive what is meant for me without needing to control every detail. And when you truly let go, you don't just make space for better things. You make space for a better version of yourself, a version that is lighter, freer, and more in tune with what actually belongs in your life. There's a comfort in waiting, a false sense of security that makes us believe that if we just stay still long enough, the answers will come. That if we overthink every decision, analyze every outcome, and wait for the perfect moment, we can somehow avoid failure, rejection, or discomfort. But waiting is a trap. A seductive, deceptive place that convinces you that you're being careful, when in reality, you're just delaying your own growth. Nothing changes in waiting. Nothing moves forward. Nothing comes knocking on your door while you sit there hoping, planning, and dreaming without taking the first step. We tell ourselves we're waiting for the right time, waiting for more confidence, for more clarity, for a sign from the universe that it's safe to begin. But the truth is, confidence doesn't come from waiting, it comes from doing. Clarity doesn't come from overthinking, it comes from action. The right time isn't something you wait for, it's something you create. And yet so many people get stuck in this cycle of hesitation. They want change, but they don't want to risk discomfort. They want growth, but they don't want to face uncertainty. They want love, success, purpose, but they don't want to take the first awkward, imperfect step toward it. Waiting feels safe. It feels rational, it feels like preparation. But there's a thin line between preparation and procrastination, between being thoughtful and being paralyzed by fear. And if you're not careful, waiting can become a habit, a way of life. You tell yourself you'll start next week, next month, next year. You wait until you feel more ready. But here's the hard truth. Waiting doesn't make you more ready. It just makes you more comfortable in your hesitation. Action is what moves things forward. Action is what breaks the cycle of self-doubt. Action is what builds momentum. Think about a time in your life when you finally stopped waiting and just did the thing. Maybe it was a difficult conversation you kept putting off, a career move you were scared to make, or a personal goal you had been avoiding. Once you took action, even if it wasn't perfect, even if it was messy, things started to shift. Because action creates clarity. You don't have to have it all figured out before you begin. You just have to take the next step, then the next, then the next. No one is coming to push you. No one is coming to hand you the perfect opportunity on a silver platter. If you don't take action, someone else will. If you don't go after what you want, you'll spend your life watching other people do it. Waiting doesn't guarantee success. It guarantees regret. There's a version of you, stronger, braver, more fulfilled, on the other side of the action you're afraid to take. The only way to meet that version of yourself is to move. to stop hesitating, to stop overanalyzing, to stop sitting in the illusion of waiting for the right moment. Because the truth is, the right moment is now. The right moment is the one you decide to take action. The right moment is the moment you stop waiting for life to happen to you and start happening to life.